quite some time since I given you a little bit of feedback on what's going on here, up here, in here. And so during this little time away, I have discovered a few things. And it happened after a retreat I was holding, and I was having a conversation with one of the attendees. And what really came through is the relationship between languages and emotions. And I was always aware of this particular aspect, but actually, just now have I understood the challenges that I have found myself in. But before I go into how they have showed up in my life, I just want to give you a little bit of an background information on how I can see this being really valuable to you too. So, most of us have had a certain relationship to languages, either because we grew up with different languages in our own household, or our parents possibly have had other relationships, or maybe ourselves have been in one environment with one language and then we moved to another place with another language and we had to translate our thoughts, our emotions, and all those beautiful things in our lives. And so every time this is happening, when we're in touch with other languages, it really strikes a challenge, because what we're feeling inside and how we are interpreting certain words and translating them in our heads don't really match with how we're really feeling. And so by avoiding any miscommunication, we either hold back or we get into a conflict of conversation and it gets and turns into something completely different. And so even if you don't have another language particular in your life, the language in itself is already way limited to the vocabulary that we have in comparison to the emotions that we sense. And it might not make sense because we have words for certain emotions. And then there are times when we feel something in our bodies, either excitement, it's bursting out of us, but we can't really just describe by I'm thrilled and I'm excited. There is more to this. There are layers to how we're feeling something, and that cannot be put into words. So, how do we even describe this? So, the only way we can get to understand how we're actually feeling is when other people feel the same way and possibly have a word for it, or are able to describe it to the T that you can say, like, yes, exactly, this is how I'm feeling. And so knowing that there is a discrepancy between the extents and the expansiveness of emotions that we can feel and the words that match them, the easier it becomes for us to just accept that our emotions have way more ways to describe how we're feeling than the words they can. And so when I was growing up, I had certain jobs that I wanted to do. I wanted to become a singer and dancer, like an entertainer that travels the world, that sings because songs were really speaking to my heart. So even if you don't understand the language, you can sense what they are talking about. Something in your body is telling you, oh, this is what I feel like. This is what I want. This is how I want to go about something, right? And the only thing that's missing is knowing what those words are. So even if someone is talking or singing about love, we can't describe it really, right? And so what really becomes interesting is then these things that we attend to, like for example, my way of wanting to become this singer wasn't necessarily about the singing and the dancing. It was about expressing my emotions, expressing how I'm feeling. And so another profession that I wanted to pursue when I was younger was being a flight attendant, because I loved languages. I loved the way to express myself, and I loved to connect to people while traveling. So there is these two connective things between those two jobs I wanted to pursue when I was younger. And also why talking about languages and emotions is so important to me, and why I want to bring this to you. like logic for you then to realize the challenges that we've been in when it comes to conflict, when it comes to miscommunication, when it comes to expressing ourselves, who we are, what we want to say when we don't have the words for it. So by connecting the dots to my past interests and passions, and now finding my way through mindfulness, I can really connect those three parts together and help you how to figure it out for yourself. Because at the end of the day, we won't be creating new words, and even if we did, it would take a very long time for other people to know what those words mean. And so therefore, we just have to figure out a way how to keep using the words that we have to our uh, to access, and then how can we when we have conflicts, when we have these challenges, to express them, how can we connect to the other people so that they understand us even without the words? We make this connection by realizing that intellectually, in heart-centered way, these two don't really connect directly. We have to find a way to really dig into the inside of ourselves, into this heart center, and feel what we want to express, and find an indirect connection to how can we intellectually express how we're feeling inside. So you could use certain songs, you could use certain ways of communication tools, you could have an extensive way of approaching this difficulty. And the number one importance here really is to stay true to who you are. So even though the vocabulary that we have is very limited, doesn't mean that we cannot be successful in expressing how we're actually feeling. And it might take a few terms. And the most important thing that I've been realizing during this exploration is really acceptance. Acceptance that I cannot fully express how I'm feeling, and I have to be okay by finding one way to just get as close as possible to how I'm feeling. And if I find myself in this conflict with another person, and this especially comes up when we're talking about relationships, when we talk about work relationships, when we talk about our children, when we talk about anything that we truly care about, these emotions can really become extremely overwhelming for the other person. And therefore, all it takes, and that might sound too simple, but really it's a practice. All it takes is patience, persistence, and the continuous interest of unity and wanting to connect with one another. So as much as languages and emotions can find themselves in conflict because they're just not matching the amount that there are in comparison to emotions and words, it is possible to connect with each other despite that. And so with that, I really invite you to look into further information that I will be sharing here with you, how we can go about these conversations, how we can create deeper connections with one another, even if it means that I cannot fully express myself with words. And there will be multiple different ways. It could be through artistic ways. It could be through writing, by explaining and describing. It could be by songs. And so I hope this was really helpful for you. I would love for you to hear. Feel free to leave it in the comments on how languages and emotions have shown up in your life. How have they caused certain challenges here and there, and what are you taking away from this conversation? And I love to have your input, because whatever you're sharing with me will be so much more impactful for you to get back now, figuring a better way out to communicate yourself with the people you love.